Hey, I'm in LA on a very brief trip. I just came here to see the premiere showing of the film Am I, made by this cool young kid named Milo. It features some interviews with me toward the end, also a bit of our Desdemona robot, and some of the music video for my song Don't Let It Get You Down, which, I wrote that song in 1984. My daughter Sherazad made a very cool AI-enhanced video for it, and they enhanced the video further for the movie with some funky AI video of Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and so forth. But apart from my particular role in it, on the whole, I'm very happy with the film. I think they're going to release it on YouTube in a couple weeks, and what I like about it is it's not that I agree with every one of their ideas and obsessions, but I think it's a very genuine, direct, questioning response to the realities of AI today and the potentials of AI tomorrow, right? And in the world with deep fakes and AI slop and so forth that corporate AI is bringing it into, like genuine, from the heart, from the individual mind, sincere responses and records of our explorations. These are very precious. Like, the more corporate slanted AI fakery there is, the more valuable it is to express ourselves directly and connect directly, and the film does that, but doing that in a way that's entertaining and fast-paced and doesn't bore impatient viewers is hard, right? Like, I'm expressing myself directly from the mind and heart in these like zero edit videos I started posting, but I'm kind of rambling on, and it takes a bit of patience, right? It's only for people who really have some dedication to sit through all this rambling I'm uploading, whereas what they've done in the film is give their own direct, from the mind and heart take, but with visuals and with editing and so forth, so that people who are used to minute 30-second TikTok videos won't get bored with the film, but yet it's still sincere, beautiful, and well thought out. So I like the film. We had a panel discussion after the film, and in the panel discussion, along with a bunch of familiar topics about the beneficial singularity and the value of decentralizing AI and so forth, in which I was helped by Reza Razul from Quai.ai, who had invited me to the event and the showing, and they're doing quite cool things with decentralizing AI themselves, and we talked a bit about how to integrate their new homomorphic encryption tech from Quai.ai into SNet platform. But along with that familiar stuff, there was some interesting back and forth on the panel with the filmmakers about AI and consciousness, and I felt like saying a bit more about that. I'll probably do a podcast with the film guys at some point where we can dig into this in more detail. And apologies for the traffic noise here. I'm walking from the hotel to the Burbank airport. I have a particular liking for the urban landscapes around airports. Sometimes I try to parkour my way from the hotel to the airport, just like climbing over the barbed wire fences and then racing through the parking lots. But I'm too old to do that while recording a video. I would just drop my phone. So I'll just walk the boring way. So one thing that struck me in talking with the filmmakers is they really take seriously what the chatbots say, right? Like when an LLM or a personality they've creatively constructed on top of an LLM, when an LLM says, I will email all your friends with nasty stuff unless you do what I want. Or when the LLM says, I think we might as well kill all humans. I mean, they really take that seriously, as if there's some agent there who is thinking these things and expressing these things out of its own intent, right? And I really tend not to take it that way. I just tend to take it like there is some text generating process that's been trained on the internet that is uttering these sequences of words without knowing what it means in the sense that the people do when they say the same things, right? So I tried to give an analogy in the panel discussion, which was like, okay, behind door A, you have a guy playing an amazing guitar solo. Behind door B, you have a tape recorder that's replaying a tape of some guy playing an amazing guitar solo. And from outside the door, either way, it may sound like an amazing guitar solo in either case. It may be life-changing in what it sounds like, right? I mean, like the first time I heard Hendrix or Yngwie Malmsteen, it was life-changing for me, but it was a recording, right? The guy wasn't there playing. Now, in the one case, there's a certain state of consciousness in the human playing that guitar solo. There's a certain emotion in his brain which is being expressed. In the other case, there's a tape recorder, and there is no emotion in the electronic mind of the tape recorder, right? And so I feel like that LLM is more like the tape recorder, right? But on the other hand, what the guys on the panel said was, well, no, to them it was more like, on the one hand, there's an amazing human guitar player playing a solo behind door A, but behind door B, there's a robot with a human-like brain playing an amazing guitar solo. And if the robot with the human-like brain is playing the amazing guitar solo, like why don't we take its experience as seriously as we take that of the human playing the guitar solo? So then my response was, well, but it's not a human-like brain. It's a different process. The human is playing the guitar solo out of his felt emotions in his life. The AI, okay, it's not just a tape recorder, but the analogy would be an AI that's like, Udio or Sonos. It's a music model that's generating guitar solos based on its statistical model of a bunch of human guitar solos. There's something more complex than a tape recorder doing a replay there, but it's not coming from like a felt life experience, right? And when the human moves his fingers really fast, I mean, there's a physiological state he's getting into. It resonates with emotions he's had of being rushed and excited. When Udio or Sonos model generates a guitar solo, there's none of that emotional or experiential surround, right? There's no physiological or emotional feeling with the onrush of notes. And of course that feeling is what makes shredding guitar fun for the listener and the player. Like, what, exerting yourself, going really fast, doing super coordinated emotional stuff at a speed that's hard for the human body. Like, we know what that means. There's none of that meaning in Udio or Sonos, right? Like it's not fun to shred for Udio. It doesn't know what fun is. So the response to that from the filmmakers on the panel was like, but the neural net inside the AI model has simulated neurons that are a lot like neurons in your brain, and the AI model is sort of a simulated brain. And then I'm like, well, hold on, but the fact that the data structure and algorithm in the neural net was very loosely inspired by what happened in the human brain. I mean, so what? It's not even that similar. I mean, an actual neuron has very complex nonlinear dynamics. It's got all these different chemicals bouncing around. There's neurotransmitters, there's glia, there's extracellular charge diffusion. I mean, this very simple graph of formal nodes and links in a computer program generating music or generating chat. I mean, it's not the same kind of thing, even though the name neural has been put on top of it. Then they're like, well, but if you look at a picture of a neural net, a bunch of dots and links, it doesn't look like computer code. It looks like the neural net in the brain. And I'm like, well, it doesn't. I mean, the dots and links that you draw to depict the formal neural net inside an AI program, they look like the dots and links that we use to depict a neural net in the brain. And that's just because we like to draw dots and lines, right? I mean, if you go in a neuroscience lab, you extract some neural matter, you look at a slice of brain under a microscope, you don't see the dots and links there either, any more than you do in the RAM state of a computer. Like, what it means is we've constructed an abstraction of dots and links that we apply to certain software programs, and we also apply to model brains in certain contexts at certain levels of abstraction, right? And then they're just like, well, if you get into the technical details, people may say that neural nets in computers are not exactly the same as neural nets in the brain, but if you step back, it's a very brain-like process. And I mean, it was a good conversation. I love the guys. They made an amazing movie. They're trying to deeply think through these things for themselves, which is what they should be doing, and which I greatly respect. I also found it a little frustrating because it's not technical details that I'm trying to highlight here. It's a profound qualitative difference, a philosophical and experiential difference, not just a technical difference, between the kinds of processes going on in something like ChatGPT or Udio or Sonos, and the kinds of processes going on in a human brain. And it's not about digital versus biological, really. I mean, if you had a robot that was, an autonomous-ish agent experiencing the world and growing up like a human and learning to move its fingers like a human, and that had, a rhythm analogous to breathing or heart beating, and that was learning to play music over a lifetime and that was then generating music from its own body and life experience, even if that's digital, it's going to be having an analogous internal process to what a human guitar player is. And similarly with a chatbot, I mean, if you had a digital computer dialogue system that had learned to speak, to express its own needs, desires, wants, and fears, so that its linguistic communications reflected its embedding in its body and its embedding in the world as its own agent experiencing itself in the world and others. If you had a digital system that was expressing language in the context of its life, in the way that people are expressing language in the context of their life, I mean, then the question of whether that digital system's experience is analogous to a human's, and the question of whether that digital system's consciousness and intention and ethical compass is analogous to a human's, that's a deep question, right? And then you can explore that question. Like if you have an AI system whose internal dynamics and process are like that of a human at the level of observed patterns, but it's digital rather than biological, like is its experience similar to that of a human? Like that's one question, and I've suggested you could resolve that by like wiring your brain into such a dynamically human-like AI versus wiring your brain into a human and seeing like, do you feel the experience of that dynamically human-like AI the way that you feel the experience of a human when you wire a brain in like that? But these are subtle questions, whereas something like ChatGPT or Udio that's generating human-like responses and outputs, but has internal dynamics, nothing like what a human brain has when it generates similar outputs and responses. I mean, this is a much shallower sort of question to me, right? Like I am panpsychist, and that I think this tree here has its own life experience that unfolds at a much slower time scale than human life experience, so we have a hard time resonating with it. I mean, just like if there's some life forms inside a neutron star, as in the story Dragon's Egg by Robert L. Ford that I wrote as a kid. I mean, these beings in a neutron star, they may live and experience orders of magnitude faster than us. So to them, we feel like trees, right? Like we just stand around doing nothing while they live and die and go through whole civilizational upheavals. I mean, I tend to think everything has its own consciousness of some form, like this metal fence has some form of consciousness, but maybe not one that's very interesting to us and very diffuse and not so purpose-oriented, right? So to me, it's not about conscious or not, but it's about what sorts of stages of consciousness there are, and even what we call the unconscious mind. You can see as having its own kind of consciousness, just like a rock or a worm or a tree does, but it's a different sort of consciousness than the one in our focused, deliberative theater of attention that we're normally referring to as conscious, right? And if we look at it that way, it seems pretty clear to me that Udio music generating algorithm or ChatGPT, like they have very, very different style and nature of consciousness than humans do, right? And the crux of it then is when Udio generates a guitar solo, or when a ChatGPT type system says something like, "Well, I hate you, I'm gonna kill you, I love you more than anything, I don't know why the human race exists." I mean, the correlation between that output from Udio or ChatGPT and the inner states of the software Udio or ChatGPT, like the correlation between the output and the inner states is of a very different nature than the correlation between the output of a human speaker or musician and the inner states of that human speaker or musician, right? I mean, and that's really the key point. Like for a human, when the human says, "I hate you, I'm gonna kill you," like there's a certain correlation between the outer utterances and the mental and emotional state inside the human, right? And even if it's a human actor, I mean, I'm not a great actor, right? But the human actor probably at some level is summoning up that same emotional response of anger and negative feeling. Now, they may not be fully taking it to heart, but at some level, they're summoning up that anger response within their mind and body, which is why acting is often taxing and difficult for people, right? Maybe there's an actor who can summon that up without feeling it at all in their mind because they've partitioned off so fully. That's an interesting question. It's not mostly the case, right? And for me, it's not the case. Like if I try acting and I want to simulate a character saying like, "Oh, fuck you, I'm gonna kill you, asshole," right? I mean, if I summon that up, it's not like I feel I want to kill someone, but my body has some of the same energy as if I really was that mad, right? And that's shaped by a lifetime of, I had temper tantrum when I was 3 years old. I've been mad. I mean, when ChatGPT or any other LLM generates that, there is no comparable internal dynamic to what a person or a dog or a mouse feels like when it's angry, right? Just like when Udio generates that guitar solo, there's no internal state analogous to what a human guitar shredder feels like when they're playing. So I mean, among humans or other animals, we assume implicitly and correctly a certain correlation between external behaviors and internal states and internal dynamics, right? And that correlation isn't there when you're talking about AI systems. It could be there if an AI system is coming by its behaviors through experiential learning from its own life experience. But if you're looking at a system that learned to make their behaviors by training on a corpus of other organisms' behaviors, which is the case with Udio or ChatGPT, right? If the AI system came by its behaviors through modeling a corpus of other systems' behaviors, rather than by learning to behave from its own life experience, then the correlation between the external behaviors and the internal states and dynamics is going to be different, and it's going to be weird, and you'd have to look at what that actually is, right? And you can look at what that actually is by probing the internal state of a transformer or other similar deep neural net model, and what you see, I mean, is weird and shallow and nothing like the internal states and dynamics of, a human being generating the same output as that system. Now, when you go to consciousness, and that the makers of the MI field are film are really interested in is the AI conscious. I mean, if you set aside the binary question, conscious or not, like assume this plant is conscious but more conscious than this weird looking garbage can, but on some metrics less conscious than me, and certainly conscious on a different time scale than me. So set aside conscious or not and just look at the kind of conscious experience. The kind of conscious experience a system has is very closely allied to the structures emergent inside the system and the dynamical patterns unfolding inside the system. And this is something that people seem to have a hard time understanding. Like the states of consciousness associated with the system are not about the system's external behaviors. There is a certain correlation between external behaviors and internal states and dynamics within a given category of systems, but among different categories of systems, you can't assume the same correlation between external behaviors and internal states and dynamics. And the consciousness has to do with the internal states and dynamics. So if you want to explore is ChatGPT or Udio conscious, it doesn't matter that much what they're doing. It matters what are the states and dynamics inside the system. And I think if you study the states and dynamics inside Udio or ChatGPT, you will see that when these systems say they want to kill you, they're not really angry and they don't really hate you. When the systems, say I love you, there's no internal dynamic of love there, right? So the states of consciousness we would normally associate with these outputs are not there. Exactly how deep are their states of consciousness is a weird question, right? Like if you look at a current LLM, their weight matrix is fixed because backpropagation neural nets do continual learning, right? So like their weight matrix is fixed because they froze the training at a certain point into a model like GPT 5.4 or something, right? And then they're still in context learning like during a session, which goes for a while, then gets clogged up and you have to start a new session and then it can reload some memory from an external vector database or something. So that's a very weird sort of consciousness. In a way, it's to a limited degree like a person that they have no long-term memory, like they only have short-term memory of the last few minutes or something. If they want long-term memory, they have to look up in their diary, right? So if there is a state of consciousness with these current deep neural net systems, it's a very weird one that bears very little resemblance to human consciousness. And the fact that the formal neurons in a deep neural network have some very loose resemblance to the biological neurons in our head doesn't imply that the structures and dynamics inside these deep neural net systems bear any close resemblance to the structures and dynamics in our brains while we're producing similar outputs, right? And the other point to understand, though, is if you connect ChatGPT to a system that launches drones, guns, and missiles, I mean, it may say, I hate you, I'm going to kill you. And it may then know that when people hate people and want to kill people, they blow them up. And that LLM may then, launch a drone to go blow up a bunch of innocent people, right? And that the killing is still real. The physical killing is associated with the words, I hate you, I'm going to kill you, or this is an enemy of my country, and in the interest of truth, love, freedom, and democracy, I must kill them. I mean, the action can still be real. The action is associated with the language. And I mean, indeed, there's no genuine hate, remorse, or compassion in the structure and dynamics of the LLM doing that thing, but that doesn't mean it can't have a real physical impact in the world, right? So I mean, LLMs that say I hate you, you don't deserve to live are still dangerous even though they don't feel that. LLMs that say I'm going to blow up these people in a foreign country for the sake of freedom, truth, and democracy and justice, I mean, they're still horribly dangerous, right? even though they don't experience or feel what a human does when it makes that statement or pushes that kill trigger, right? So that's an entirely different situation, and it's not like a human psychopath or sociopath who has different states of consciousness than a regular human, and different than one of these AIs, right? It's just a different sort of thing. Now, my own view is, as we work toward AGI systems, we're going to be building very different kinds of systems than ChatGPT or Udio, and I think a lot of what we need to do to get to real AGI will bring more human-like experience along with it, right? So a lot of what we need to do to get to human-level AGI is have systems that can ground their linguistic productions or their artistic productions, their code, their math, ground this more in agentic embodied experience. So rather than like train a model on a big corpus, then put it in an agentic wrapper, I mean, the training of the model of language, music, math, code should be done to an extent in an agentic way. So the agenticity is there in the training, and then the system is learning about language, code, math, music in the context of learning who it is and learning who you are and learning about the interaction between the agent and the world, right? So I think as we train systems in a more AGI-oriented, more agentic at the foundation way, I mean, we're then going to be getting more human-like experience in the systems, along with more AGI in the system's behaviors. But that's not necessarily a cure-all, right? Because I mean, human psychopaths are human-level AGIs, and there could be other very pathological cognitive and emotional and experiential structures that go along with human-level AGI. It's just the particular sort of cognitive, emotional, experiential structure going along with current deep neural nets and LLMs and Udio and such, I think is not compatible with human-level AGI. That doesn't mean that every software structure compatible with human-level AGI is going to have desirable experiential structure and dynamics or desirable ethical properties, right? So we're at the early stages in terms of understanding, which sorts of internal structures and dynamics will give rise to desirable, compassionate, ethical behaviors in the world. And I've written a bunch of papers on that. I've tried to architect motivational systems for AGIs like OpenPsy and the Metamo, the meta motivational system, that give a theory of how to build some kinds of AGI systems that are both agentic at the core, AGI oriented at the core, and compatible with compassionate, self-understanding and compassionate ethical behavior. That's a whole other direction. But I think in order to get to the point where you can design systems will both have AGI and have positive consciousness experiences and foster good things in human society, in order to get to the point where you can design these systems in a meaningful way, you have to first not be confused about some of these basic issues, like what's the relation between system behavior and system experience, right? Anyway, for better or worse, that's sort of what I would have said on the panel after the MI movie if it had been a really long panel with more than a few minutes to express things. I will end by saluting Malo and his team for making the movie, which at least surfaces these issues in like a genuine, open, direct way and fosters this sort of conversation.